Ryan Tannehill told me for the first time in his football life, he really went into sort of a dark space after they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals.
There's a theory floating around that the Super Bowl run made by the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals shifted the rest of the league into hyperdrive. The Bengals executed a rebuild in a matter of only 2 or 3 years, and because the early pieces needed the latter pieces in order to show the value they bring, NFL organizations and fans alike never saw it coming and was caught completely off guard. Many people, myself included, believe that this plays some role in the insane offseason we just experienced, with some calling it the craziest offseason in NFL history. And that's not a clickbait YouTuber with that title. This is the official NFL YouTube page, bro. With teams across the league going all in at a rate we usually don't see in the NFL, now in one offseason, several teams have assembled some truly impressive rosters. Last year, Cincinnati was almost completely unique, but now several teams have tried to implement the Bengals formula in one way or another, either reuniting former college teammates or looking to add multiple number one receivers on the same team. It's created so much excitement for the league as a whole, and I am amped for this season to start, because even though I'm a Bengals fan, I am an NFL fan. I watch everything and I enjoy most of it. But with that said, in the midst of all the hoopla, some people have already forgotten about the team that started a lot of these major trends in the first place and then rode that all the way to a Super Bowl appearance. If you're new here and you don't know what to expect from my Bengals videos, no matter how objective I try to be, as a Bengals fan, there's no way to completely avoid some type of bias when it comes to the Bengals. But even with that being said, y'all know I'm not going to jump on here and just say some stuff that I don't believe. I absolutely recognize the Rams' influence on the modern NFL. Hell, we even got our coach from over there, so respect. Let's not forget about the Kansas City Chiefs. They did it with a top tight end and a top wide receiver for years, but if you paid attention, you can't really deny that the Bengals run last year made a huge impact on the NFL. You can't take that away from us, though many have tried. But now the Bengals have to survive in the new AFC, an extremely harsh environment that they helped create, all in order to receive any lasting credit for the work that they've done. If they don't continue to win, they'll likely be written off, as history is literally rewritten into something more palatable for the mainstream media, many of which just cannot wrap their minds around the fact that, hey, Cincinnati's a real threat now. The stage is perfectly set for the Bengals to change the perception of the organization forever. We got 5 primetime games, stars all over the field, and coming off of that Super Bowl run, it's all but guaranteed that the Bengals are going to have more eyeballs on them this year than ever before. And the images presented to those eyeballs will likely be the lasting perception of this team for years to come. Every year, people ask if I'm gonna do more Bengals content here on the channel. And while I like to sprinkle it in, on this channel I've always taken more of a global approach to discussing football, and that for the most part will continue. But if you want to see my full fan side come out, you might want to lean in for this part. Me and KTO are bringing the Sports Therapy Podcast back for the 2022-2023 season. But this year, we're taking a slightly different approach. We're going to be doing live commentary on the Sports Therapy YouTube channel during every Bengals game and every Browns game. So if you want to come chill with your boy during games and watch the Bengals season unfold in real time, click the link in the description and subscribe to the Sports Therapy YouTube channel. If you already been subscribed, appreciate your patience, but make sure your notifications are on, because we're going live this Sunday a little bit before noon Central Time. We'll be shooting the shit, probably talking a little bit of trash, interacting with the chat, just chilling really, bro. But I do want to give you fair warning, I'm very passionate about my team, so if you're not ready for that, this might not be for you.
He dropped it! Fuck!
Last year's Bengals were accused of using dead silence. They said we snuck up on people. And as a 10-7 team who was 4-12 the year before, hey, we had to make sure our perk setup was on point. But this year we rocking loud and proud, permanently highlighted on every single team's mini-map. And since last year's performance was so up and down, now the whole Bengals show is completely riding on this encore performance. So for the 2022-2023 NFL season, it's time to cue the Wayne on this thing, bruh. Cue the Wayne. Let's get it.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get it.
Alright, real quick before we jump in, today's video is sponsored by DraftKings. Now after this video, chances are we won't ever talk about the 2022 NFL preseason again, because thankfully, it's finally that time of the year we all been waiting for. The NFL regular season. And what better way to kick things off than with an exciting deal from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers, all you gotta do is bet $5 on any NFL wager and you'll instantly receive $200 in free bets. You heard me right. DraftKings is giving $200 to new customers when they place a $5 or more wager on any NFL team. Plus, with same game parlays, you can combine multiple bets from the same game to give yourself a shot at even bigger winnings. And that's all season long, 17 weeks. Now, for those in the state where sports betting is not available yet, don't forget about the DraftKings Daily Fantasy, because over there they've been innovating even more ways for you to win some bread. DraftKings has been around for a long time, so you can feel confident that your funds are safe and you can withdraw whenever you want. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook now. New customers, use the code FlemLo and receive $200 in free bets when you make a $5 or more wager on any team of your choosing. That's promo code FlemLo only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Man, shout out to DraftKings once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, let's get it. The extent to which Joe Burrow has changed the Bengals organization in just one full season is wild. The Super Bowl appearance, high profile, packed stadiums again, even in the preseason. The Bengals organization is building an indoor practice facility after years of being one of the few teams without one. They even signed a deal for naming rights at a historic Paul Brown Stadium. When it comes to a lot of these things, the Bengals organization has kind of been stuck in the mud for an extremely long time. Joe Burrow has played one full season and triggered all of this change. Obviously, he ain't do it by himself, but I've been a fan of the Bengals for a long time. And this is far from the first time we've had a good roster, but it is the first time we had a quarterback like this. The stadium naming rights deal is being done so that the Bengals will have more cash flow to guarantee a few massive contracts that are coming up faster than Trey Hendrickson coming off the edge. The new name is Paycor Stadium, named after a software company in Cincinnati, and yeah, the name is extremely ironic. It's a move directly tied to paying the core of the Bengals team and attempting to keep this thing intact for longer than just, one contract cycle. So not only has Burrow helped change the Bengals on the field in an extremely short period of time that has to be a record, this dude has just breathed a new life into the organization. We got new uniforms right after he came. The social media team stepped their game up massively. We're signing dudes in free agency. Dude just gave the entire organization a quick facelift. Burrow and Jamar have brought a level of star power to the team that we hadn't seen since Ocho. And this new light is also being shined on other players on the offense like Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, all who deserve more spotlight before Joe and Jamar arrived, but weren't truly given their due until just last season. One of the things that impressed me the most was just how ready these dudes were for their close-up. I mean, yeah, I saw T. Higgins in the national championship against Burrow and Chase in college. So in particular with this one, I'm really talking about Mixon and Boyd. See, both of these dudes have been Bengals for years, as they got their starts during the latter parts of the Andy Dalton, AJ Green regime. Now that regime was pretty good in the early stages, as AJ and Andy made the playoffs in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015. 5 years in a row from the time they was rookies, but what happened once they got to the playoffs, whole different story. But Tyler Boyd got there the year after the Bengals' 5th straight trip to the playoffs, meaning he got there at the start of the drought. Mixon got there the very next year, so for the first 5 years of their careers, they were on teams that went 6-9-1, 7-9, and 6-10. Then it got worse before it got better as we went 2-14 in 2019 and 4-11 in 2020. So this past year was the first time since being in the NFL that Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd have been on winning teams. It's the first time they've been in the playoffs. So I was very happy to see last year that two guys who made it over from the old regime on offense were just as effective as they've been on those bad teams. Because that ain't always the case. Sometimes you come across these players who seem to be built to put up numbers on a bad team. But the second the team starts to get good, all of a sudden you hear stories that that player is struggling to fit within the offense. You know, now that the system's not just built around allowing them to freelance every play, or if they're on offense, just forcing them the ball over and over. Then you'll see some other guys just check out mentally if they're not the main guy. They'll refuse to buy into a new role and then stunt the growth of the team as a whole. The Bengals drafting receivers in the second, then first round in back-to-back years in some ways could have threatened both of these guys. Boyd would get less targets, and Mixon, with the new focus on the passing game, for all he knew, could have gotten phased out of the offense. Both guys had to adjust to a brand new coach and a new system. And if those guys didn't buy in 2 or 3 years back, you wouldn't have saw that run from the Bengals that you saw last year. But not only did they buy in, they bought all the way in and encouraged the change. We're talking to the point where they were both voted captains of that young, flashy team from last year. The holdovers, who were stars in their own right, but are more like role players in this new offense. People generally assume that Chase or Higgins kind of lead the way in that wide receiver room because they lead the way statistically. But from everything I've read and everything I've been told from guys who hang out with these cats from time to time, Tyler Boyd is the undisputed leader of that group. The big brother who's talented in his own right, but not quite as physically gifted as his two little bros. But the value of players like him goes a hell of a lot deeper than statistical output. Even though he didn't know exactly where it would land, things worked out pretty good for Joe Mixon last year. Partially due to Burrow coming off that knee injury, Joe Mixon got the most carries and yards of his entire career, and that was despite not playing in the final game of the season. Tyler Boyd, on the other hand, had the second lowest targets of his career, at least in any season where he's played at least 15 games. He still put up very good numbers, especially for a number 3 receiver, but his willingness to buy into his role and do a lot of the dirty work clearing out things for Chase and T, that's the difference between winning and losing. So I remember this one play the year we went 2-14. We was playing in this meaningless tank bowl game against the Dolphins, and many of the fans knew we had to lose that game if we wanted to draft Joe Burrow. But Tyler Boyd, who honestly had nothing to play for at that point, was going so damn hard in this meaningless game, all the way at the end of a long, disastrous 2-14 season. After making a play, he started cramping up, but he didn't lay there in defeat. Dude crawled on the ground to get lined up so that Dalton could spike the ball and we wouldn't get a penalty. Thankfully, we lost anyway and drafted Joe Burrow number 1, but I never forgot that play. That was the game I knew for a fact that he had to be a part of the new regime. Of course, everybody knows about Chase and Higgins now, so I'll keep this part short. T. Higgins turned 23 years old this year in 2022. So when he did this last year, he was only 22 years old. Dude hadn't even developed his full-grown man strength yet, and in 2 years in the NFL, he's got 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, and that's despite missing 4 games over that stretch. Every year until dude truly hits his prime, he's gonna make strides. I think it's fair to say he's probably gonna cover a lot of ground. Now, Jamar Chase to me represents in a lot of ways kind of the antithesis of those Bengal teams from the early 2010s. Those teams played great if it was Sunday at noon, but once the bright lights came on, talking prime time or the playoffs, that team would often show up small. But I noticed something early with Chase last year, and I saw it carry on throughout the entire run. The bigger the game, the bigger he played. As otherworldly as he already is, he's just got another level he can tap into when it's game time. And I actually think that played a role in his poor preseason before last year. Of course he had the layoff as he didn't play that final year at LSU. And I can't remember the exact quote, but just hearing him talk about the preseason, it seemed like he was trying, but he just could not categorize it in his brain as a real game because it's not a real game. First week of the regular season, that switch get flipped, and then every time I saw a dude on a football field after that, he was making play after play after play all the way to the Super Bowl. Like, this play is so slept on, and if this play would have turned out differently, this play would be seen differently. But that's what I was talking about at the beginning. That's why I say the Bengals have to continue to win, or even plays like this will not matter. People will forget. Anyway, Chase had a great rookie year, probably the best we've ever seen from a wide receiver, especially if we're also counting the playoffs, which any other time we count the playoffs when we can use it as a negative against the Bengals. So we gonna count them right now when we're using it as a positive. And the only thing that held Chase back from having an even better season was the one unit that held the entire team back as a whole. So the big thing is offensive line. The Bengals completely revamped it in the offseason. They added two of Tom Brady's former Super Bowl interior guys and a stud in La'el Collins on the outside. So Jonah Williams, 24-year-old left tackle out of Alabama, first round pick a few years ago. This one guy is the only holdover from the Bengals offensive line that you saw last year. The other four guys are completely brand new. I just named three of them, and the fourth is a fourth round rookie named Cordell Volson. He's gonna be starting at the left guard spot. He definitely didn't come into camp as the starter, but he won the job throughout training camp and looked good in the preseason. So on paper, the offensive line should be way better. PFF even graded the Bengals a top 10 O-line on paper, which just feels crazy to say. But I do stress on paper because we haven't seen these guys much together, as not a single Bengals starter played in the preseason. However, we did do joint practices with the Rams, and even though it ended on a bad note, the offensive line was said to have held their own. Still, we got to see it in a real game, and this Sunday, we'll be able to figure that out pretty quickly. With such a massive upgrade on paper, it's hard to imagine four vets who've all played well for the most part throughout their careers, plus an extremely hard-working rookie who looked good in preseason, won't be better than last year's group. Which just, please be better than last year's group. If they are better, there's no reason to expect that the Bengals offense won't take another step. I know a lot of people tuned in late, but trust me, it was sloppy last year. People like to point out the overall efficiency numbers because it helps them sleep better at night. But we all know that the offensive line was completely broken. That's why, it's a miracle that the efficiency numbers are even what they were. If you can clean up a decent amount of that, plus the fact that Burrow is a year better. He's not coming off an ACL surgery. He did have the appendectomy, but he's been back in practice for weeks. He participated in the joint practices versus the Rams, took every first team rep. Jamar Chase is a year better. T. Higgins is a year better. And even Jonah Williams at 24 years old, who was easily the best part of that offensive line last year, he's actually still got room to improve himself. So nobody should just be surprised if this team takes another massive step. I think we have the personnel that makes it possible for us to thread that needle and maintain a lot of the explosive plays from last year, but also become a lot more efficient. In a lot of games last year, the team would play well in spots during games. So it'd be like a good second quarter and a good third, but a trash first and fourth. Or maybe we play bad the whole first half, score on the last play of the second quarter, and then carry that over into the second half and barely squeak out a win. There were very few weeks where we could get things clicking on all cylinders for the entire game. When that happened, we blew teams out. But because the offensive line was completely broken, we went into every game with a crazy mismatch up front right out the gate. We couldn't even run play action without the man having two dudes in his face the second he turned around. We ran the ball a lot more than we probably should have, but Zach Taylor and the coaching staff had to do that, especially early in the year, to protect Burrow, who again was coming off of surgery behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Now, one of the good things about the Bengals offense last year, and I'll be curious if this carries over, last year we had this ability, really as a team, as a whole, to morph into whatever the game called for. We could play from behind, we could play with a lead, we could blow you out, we could come back. We can win a smash mouth game, we can win a shootout. We saw it all throughout the regular season and the playoffs, and we saw the team growing every week, getting better, figuring out new ways to win. A massive difference because we used to figure out ways to lose. This year I expect all those things to come together to create a better, more experienced, more consistent team that's still crazy explosive. And if things go my way, that's going to be a terrifying sight for other teams on game days. Now, the defense was also underrated last year. Lou Anarumo's second half adjustments got chalked up to Mahomes choking, but a more notable coach as far as being well known would have gotten way more credit for what he did in 2 second halves versus the Chiefs. Well, the mad scientist is back and one of the league's best safety duos is back as well. Maybe this is the last year for this duo with Jesse Bates playing on the franchise tag, but with Dax Hill looking like a natural in the preseason, he's poised to step into that role in the future if need be. But this year we just got one of the most dynamic young safeties in the league with no particular place that he has to be on the field, allowing him to do what he did best in college, a little bit of everything. Dax will be added to an already dynamic defense who made a ton of plays all last year. Remember how everybody complained about the overtime rules after that Chiefs and Bills game? Then just so happened the very next week, the Bengals find themselves in the exact same situation against the exact same team. And what did they do? They actually played defense, got the stop, gave the ball back to the offense, and the 2 guys who made the play, Jesse Bates and Von Bell. Mike Hilton is one of the best slot corners in the league. Chidobe Awuzie is extremely slept on, dude is nice, and Eli Apple is seen as the weak link, but the honest to God truth is Eli Apple was very serviceable for us last year. I know he was garbage in his last 2 stops, but Bengals' experience with Eli Apple is that he was basically an average corner for us last year. If he can do that again this year, there's enough around him where he'll be perfectly fine. Cooper Kupp had 2,000 yards, bro. Not a single Bengals fan expected Eli to shut the man down. He's not that good of a corner. Trey Hendrickson is the best player on the defense, and last year, dude was right there with the top pass rushers in the league. I expect more of the same from him as a lot of the offensive lines in the division look more like that Bengals O-line from last year that other division opponents got to pad their stats against. Also, Sam Hubbard is back, and now we have added depth on the edge, so these dudes don't have to play every single snap like it seemed they were doing down the stretch last year. Then we got DJ and BJ, Reader and Hill, our 2 D tackles rounding out the starters. Our linebackers are also back. Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt have both been ascending since we drafted them. Logan's got more upside but has struggled with injury early in his career, and Pratt is the man. He's extremely steady, and he caught the interception that ended the Bengals playoff drought last year. Now the last 2 guys I want to talk about are kind of like secret weapons for the Bengals. One is Evan McPherson, who's not actually a secret, but when mainstream media talks about the Bengals as far as win-loss total, playoffs, and how good our team is constructed, unless it's like Pat McAfee talking about the team, Evan McPherson really doesn't come up. But dude had one of the best rookie seasons of any rookie kicker ever. Made consistent 50+ yarders and hit clutch kick after clutch kick in the playoffs. Thing I love about Evan is he's not just a kicker. Dude is a weapon. I'm not comparing him to Justin Tucker as far as longevity, that would be stupid. But as far as talent and the ability to summon that talent on command and had a confidence to hit these kicks when it really matters, it'll probably take the first 4 to 6 games of this season to see him continue to do that he's gonna be talked about as far as current in the NFL. Not all-time legacy, but as far as who you want kicking right now, he'll be talked about on that same level. And the last weapon I want to talk about is actually a secret weapon. Tight end Hayden Hurst, who the Bengals quietly picked up in free agency on an extremely team-friendly deal. Now, Hayden Hurst has had a rough NFL career so far. And it's crazy because it's not even like he's played bad, he's just been in some bad situations or some situations that have not worked out for him specifically. So in 2018, the Ravens drafted him in the first round. Then they hedged their bet like they'll often do, and they drafted another tight end, Mark Andrews, in the second round. This is not an indictment on Hayden Hurst. They did this again this year, and they'll see which one or two of those tight ends kind of rises. But after Mark Andrews began to look like one of the best tight ends in the league, Atlanta contacted Baltimore and was willing to part ways with a second-round pick for Hayden Hurst. And since the Ravens had struck gold on Mark Andrews, they went ahead and parted with Hayden Hurst, shipping him off to the Falcons. In 2020, he finished with 571 yards on 56 receptions. He scored 6 touchdowns and had a pretty good year. A solid season, but he still felt he wasn't being used in the best way to complement his skill set. Then the 2021 draft rolls around. But instead of taking a player like a Jamar Chase who would have further complemented Hayden Hurst, the Falcons instead decided to take a player who would replace Hayden Hurst, a generational tight end who already looks to be a home run. Kyle Pitts, like Mark Andrews before, came in and displaced a talented tight end who's good but not quite seen as elite. There's probably a lot of spots he could have landed in the NFL where he'd have signed a second contract and still been the main tight end from day one. But he just so happened to end up on the same roster as Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts. That's tough. So Hayden found himself searching for a home in free agency, and with the departure of CJ Uzomah, Hayden was able to find a place that fit him perfectly, playing with the best passer he's played with in his entire career, and now coming back full circle and being able to complement Jamar Chase. After all, Uzomah had his best season by far as a pro last year playing with Joe Burrow. And with our three-headed wide receiver core, I see no reason why Hayden Hurst won't be able to do the same, and I actually think he's gonna be better, at least in the receiving game. He's a better natural receiving threat than Uzomah. He's faster, he's more explosive, he's more twitchy. He's got some good traits, and I think Joe Burrow's the right guy to best utilize those traits all in the flow of the offense. I believe he's playing in a better version of the offense than CJ Uzomah played in, as the offensive line is being upgraded and now Chase and Joe and T have all gotten a year better. Not to mention Zach Taylor getting a year better too. I had mentioned that. But I really think Hayden can be that secret weapon, especially early in the year when teams want to play too high safeties all game, trying to mitigate big plays down the field and chasing Higgins. They do that, Hayden Hurst and Tyler Boyd should have space to go to work and also have more time to work open underneath. And if we actually have a play action game this year, bruh, I can see Hayden Hurst getting multiple freebies in the end zone. I can see him getting out of space and really having an opportunity to showcase what he can do. Plus, he gets his 2 revenge games versus the Ravens, so hopefully he can show out in those. So that's my general thoughts on the team as a whole. But how good will the Bengals be this season? When it's all said and done, I expect the Bengals to be the AFC North champions once again. I don't expect it to be easy, and I don't expect us to win every individual division game, but when it's all said and done, I do expect us to be sitting on the top. Like I said, I think Baltimore is definitely the biggest threat, but this division as a whole is always threatening. As much as we hate the Steelers, you gotta respect them. They're extremely well coached, and they definitely have some dudes out there, especially on defense, but their receiving core is nice. Najee is nice. The problem with the Steelers is their O-line is trash, and they got Mitch Trubisky starting at quarterback. And that's not even me trying to disrespect Mitch Trubisky, but I think he's essentially an average quarterback at best, playing behind a below average offensive line. That usually doesn't bode well. Cleveland doesn't get Deshaun back until week 11, so they're going to be trying to tread water up until that point. They have a great roster. They have a really good roster, so they're going to be able to win some games with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback most likely. But Cleveland is always really like flammable. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to know what to expect. I can see them just handing the ball off every single play, running their little play action offense. So probably out of every team in the division, I would say Cleveland is the team maybe best suited to have to survive with a backup quarterback. And Jacoby Brissett is one of the better backup quarterbacks. So, you know, they may be okay, and in the second half of the season, we might have to look out for Cleveland, you know. But that's kind of the beauty of this year. I don't know, like, it's so many teams, specifically in the AFC, but there's some good NFC teams as well. But in the AFC, there's going to be good teams who probably won't even make the playoffs, who absolutely would have made it in most other seasons. But at the end of the day, we all just hoping our team is not the one that get left back, you know? So like I said, I expect the Bengals to have to fight for it, but I expect them to take the division. And I believe we're going to win somewhere between 10 and 14 games. So I'll make my official prediction 12 12-5. I got the Bengals going 12-5, first place in the AFC North and fighting for first place in the AFC. I know. We're going to be fighting for it, though. So like I said in the beginning, man, if you want to watch live reactions to the Cincinnati Bengals games all season long, and also live reactions to the Cleveland Browns from my boy KTO, it's been much requested that we're bringing the Sports Therapy Podcast back. We're going to be live every Sunday. I mean, we're not like the most vile, rotten dudes out there, but there will be some profanity, there will be some screaming, some yelling, some excitement, some football. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know how this go. If you interested in that, man, check us out this Sunday. All right, links in the description. Go ahead, subscribe to the Sports Therapy channel. Turn on your notifications. That way, once we go live, you know we live. It'll probably be 30-40 minutes before the noon game start. Y'all can come through and kick it with us, man. Other than that, I'll catch y'all boys in the next one.